How was your night? And I guess it was fine. Well, I'm asking and I'm answering because I trust.
Because you trust.
I trust it was fine. Absolutely. My name is Otto Basitam. I'm quite excited to be here today.
And I am Frank Sisson, and welcome to Rise and Shine Midweek Edition. And like you rightly said, I slept well, and I want to believe you slept well as well. So, I
Mm.
mean, if you were around the city of Uyo and Calabar, I've heard some parts of Port Harcourt, it rained last night. And once it
Exactly the
rains,
reason
I
I asked the
mean, yeah,
question.
once it rains, the sleep is just heavenly.
So yes, the rains are back, and I think at this point, a lot of persons might need to restock or get some essentials that they might need during this period. One of which is umbrella. You never can tell when the rains will come because once it starts, then we might have a chain rain back to back every day. So it's necessary you get an umbrella for yourself. It's also necessary you get a spare shoe in case your shoe is not what you can use to walk our beautiful roads in Nigeria.
Well, I don't know about that, but if you want to consider the kind of rain that came yesterday or last
Mm.
night,
Well,
it's not the kind of rain that you can walk with an umbrella on the road.
oh,
It's that kind of rain that comes
at
with
some
some
point,
some wind and some storm and
mm,
some little, in between kind of thunderbolt. So you wouldn't want to be caught on the road within that time.
absolutely, you wouldn't want to be caught on the road, but at some point, it will come down, but not completely stop. It will just be drizzling, and at that point, you can put up your umbrella, and then you say, okay, let me walk to the closest bus stop, and maybe take a ride home. Yeah, it is
Well,
what it is.
you can
And
walk.
for the ladies, you will need a
Uh-huh.
shower cap. Shower cap is
Uh-oh.
also an essential at this
How
point.
about the guys who make the hairs?
Guys, you can always wash it off and then wipe it. But for the ladies who actually braid, man, you need a shower cap so that we won't have that deodorant that a lot of persons do not want to perceive.
It's a
Yes,
nice one.
yes, it's important that we get those essentials. But since we woke up on a very good mood this morning, yes, we came up with good and bad news, depending on how you receive the news. Yes, the federal government of Nigeria has approved new polytechnics. Now, to you, let me turn you into a guest now. Is that a good or a bad news?
Is that a good or a bad news? I understand that education is very important
Mm-hmm.
and we cannot downplay it.
Absolutely.
However, the federal government over time, through its different, loggerheads with ASU and other academic bodies, have come to show Nigerians that education is not probably, might not probably be their priority. I mean, what is the essence? I mean, I ask at this point, what is the essence of approving four new polytechnics when ASU is currently on strike? What's the essence of approving four new polytechnics when there are polytechnics in this country that students literally sit on the floor or perch by the windows to receive lectures? What is the aim of approving four new polytechnics when you have not effectively equipped all the other polytechnics that are in existence that are owned by the federal government? I mean, I don't see it as a good news. Yeah, to the locations that the polytechnics are cited, it might be a good news, but when you consider the nitty-gritties, you consider the things that are presently happening, then it's not really an exciting one.
Well, for the lucky states, Abia State has one, Delta, then Kanu has one as well. And then, of course, you would understand, like you said, I'll start with the positive because looking at it, it's a welcome development in the educational sector because their aim is to make education more accessible to a lot of people and a lot of Nigerians, regardless of whether it's a quality education or whether or not it's going to last. Because you did
I
mention,
like that
you did
statement.
mention that, it's not a good scenario for other existing polytechnics where students would have to page on windows and all of that, dilapidated structures to receive learning. But then it is what it is, and quite frankly, to a large extent, it will bring in employment because new lecturers will have to be recruited to teach there. then you will need admin staff, you will need cleaners, you will need, that's another room for employment for Kano, for Abia. Yes, good luck to you. But talking about ASU and the education at large, well, it might not really come out good from that angle, but you know, I like to silence the not too good angle and look at the positive side. Yes.
Yeah, we're all positive beings, like I would always say. Nigerians are lovers of good things. We love amazing things. We love beautiful things. We love good news.
Yeah.
But the problem is when you give us good news and then we wake up, you know, it's like giving somebody a test of sugar. And then there is these bitter cola tests underneath the sugar, just that the sugar flavor just lasts within seconds. And then all we have after that is the bitter, test on a test box. That's not what Nigerians need. Yes, it's going to create employment. Yes, it's going to put food on the table of some unemployed person. That is, of course, if due process is carried along or is utilized to recruit the needed staff, and not based on who knows who, whose uncle knows whose and can do what to get the job for their loved ones. If they throw it open and it's based on credit or merit rather, then it's going to put food on the tables of the right persons and the right individuals who really merit the job. But then, in as much as this would open ways, like you say, what is the essence of giving somebody education when it is not functional, it is not adequate, it is not professional enough, it is not enough to equip that person to compete favorably with his or her contemporaries? So you have 4 extra polytechnics. What is the guarantee that you are going to equip? Okay, let's even start like maybe the federal government would this time, you know, decide to use this 4 new polytechnic as a model by building a state-of-the-art facilities and equipping them properly, from the library to the laboratories to the classroom to the admin blocks to the gadgets that are needed.
Why are you trying to turn me into a party pooper?
No, I want to do your part and be positive. Let's just say maybe this time, since ASU is on strike, and then we have a lot of issues and questions bordering on the quality of education in Nigeria, and the federal government is finally coming out to say, okay, we want to bring education closer to the people.
Well, let's get off the clouds first, and let me throw your line and be realistic. Well, the approval has been done. Let's just hope that it gets established in time, because these things take time. Don't forget that the state of which these polytechnics have been located to approved for might have issues with the site. You know, there would be a proposed site already, and you don't know where perhaps the state governor or other key players in the state would want to relocate it to. That's another angle that might take a long time to get resolved before it's been implemented. So talking about the federal government of Nigeria, you know, using these new polytechnics as a model for other the rest, you know, these are actually put the number of polytechnics into 36 in the nation. But you want to use this one from your point of view as a model. Come on, are you trying to get me to be negative?
No, I'm not.
No, it's not going to work.
I'm actually joining you to be very
it's not
positive.
Going to work.
You know, they say there is always a first time. So yes, we know the educational sector is not what we would want it to be. Yes, we know our infrastructure in the educational system is not what we want. Yes, we know the quality of education is not what we deserve as Nigerians. And yes, maybe there's, you know, just out of hope, faith, and belief in the goodwill of the federal government, I'm just thinking aloud.
You know, I've been able to convert a soul. Now I'm listening to Francis, and I'm not seeing Francis talking. Francis, come on and be real. Come on. Now, this is not you. But the truth of the matter is this. In as much as education in Nigeria is not what we expect to be, we are not there yet. But I know ASU and other bodies, like, because I know the primary school teachers just went on strike for one reason or the other. All bodies are on ground to get government in check to see that they give the needed attention the education needs in Nigeria. But I can't assure Nigerians, I can't say emphatically that that is going to be the case to avoid ambiguity, because yes, it might be ironic, but the true situation is that that might not be the case. It would have been awesome if the federal government can actually make these polytechnics a model polytechnic. And quite frankly, it should have been something out of this world, something that would wow Nigerians. It would have come as a surprise. But yes, I don't see that coming personally. So I wouldn't want to put my head in the clouds so that I won't get disappointed. So the truth of the matter is the polytechnics have been approved. They're going, whether or not it's going to be a model or whether or not it's going to join the other existing, I think 35, yes, or 36 or thereabout. Okay, yes, then Nigerians will welcome it. You know, half bread, a lot of persons would say it's better than none.
My dear, half bread is not better than none. Because if you take half bread and then you are at the point where you are in between life and death, and then you take half of a bread that barely satisfies you, then it makes you more hungry. Because the worm in your stomach, who have been very hungry, who had been probably eating out your intestine looking for food, would rush at the half that you've just taken. And guess what? When it's not sufficient enough, with the aggression they will come, you're going to end up more damaged than you would have been if you hadn't had the half bread.
Well.
So it is better, yeah. Well, like I said, today I'm on a positive side. So I'm just hoping that the federal government
Is it because yesterday was your birthday?
No.
Okay, it's a new year for you. I know it's the right time. Maybe it's one of those resolutions you made to be on the positive side. Well, it's a welcome development, and I hope Nigerians can look, or Nigeria or the federal government can also be positive in all their dealings. Yes, this is a positive development, but we hope to see implementation also come out positive and not what a typical Nigerian would want to see, school blocks that looks like a primary school and all of that, and then no library, no functional laboratories, no functional equipment. And I think this is a time where people would have to come in. I know there will be some counterpart funding from the state government and all of that. So all hands must be on deck to ensure that we have a functional polytechnics where Nigerians can also acquire at least quality education.
Yeah, I definitely hope that will happen. We pray it happens. I mean, if it happens, it's to the glory of the federal government and the Nigerian people. And if it doesn't happen, well,
it is what it is. I mean, it doesn't happen well. And still in that line, Chris Ngige, the Minister for Labour and Productivity, also was heard saying that his hands are tied, that is beyond him. That's with the issue of ASU. Because I know you did mention a situation where ASU is on strike and the federal government, rather than try to resolve whatever differences they have between ASU, they are approving new polytechnics when, of course, education is almost at a sham at this point. Would a lot of persons would argue the money for this would have been channeled to revitalizing or maybe solving the issue between ASU and the federal government. And to a large extent, Chris Ngige seems to be of the opinion that strike shouldn't always be the last result. There's something called clicking, where ASU members would have to head to the Ministry of Federal Ministry of Education to stay on the hallway, perhaps clap all day, and they stop the peace, so that the minister can also, to a large extent, respond to the concerns of ASU.
Well, in as much as Chris Ngige has said that the federal government is not against negotiations or renegotiations with ASU, I think at this point ASU's stance is pretty much clear. What they want is what they need, and if that is what it is needed for the university sector to move on, then the federal government has no choice. And I think at this point ASU is ready to do whatever it takes to get the right thing done. Because guess what? You've had all of the chances. You've had the talks and the negotiations and renegotiations. You've had different MOUs and MOAs signed. And then years down the line, the federal government is not doing what he promised he was going to do. Now, ASU have stated it clearly that before embarking on strike, they have oftentimes resorted to that because they have exhausted every other sane measures, and the federal government isn't listening. It is like now, you say there is no money to take care of ASU, but there is money for you to channel to creating 4 new polytechnics. There is no money for ASU, but we are going to have money for elections. There is no money for ASU, but there is money for you to repair the rail line that was attacked immediately. There is no money for ASU.
Of course.
Yet the federal government is planning to go borrowing.
It has not been announced that renovation has started.
It has not been announced, but
on
they
the rail
said
lines.
it's going to commence immediately. So before Amechi made that statement, there must have been funds kept somewhere. Or probably it's been factored into the new debt that the president wants to borrow.
Quite certainly, this goes a long way to show where priorities are placed on in this particular administration. Because not that for the lack of money, but it could be just because they don't place priority on certain aspects, or they don't deem fit to address certain aspects, and they would rather pay attention to renovating the rail lines that was damaged due to the attack, and of course maybe perhaps also put more funds into the general elections. A lot of persons within the cabinet of President Muhammadu Buhari are vying for one office or the other, so they have a lot to do in terms of time, in terms of resources, energy, and all of that.
So you could clearly, if I wanted to the lines of us right now, that probably one of the reasons the federal government or governments don't really put efforts into making the academic sector work is that probably there's nobody amongst them who is going to benefit from the funds that is going to be released to that sector. So when they consider, nobody's going to get a kickback, nobody's going to get the extra addition that probably might come as a result of the funds that is being dished out to the academic sector, and they probably feel it's not worth it.
Perhaps.
Perhaps it's true, perhaps it's not true. But then I think at this point, the government should stand and take a decisive stand and tell Nigerians, okay, we value the educational system. Like you rightly said, look at what Nigerians have had to face with the crisis in Ukraine because of the thousands of Nigerians who go out for education. But we could prevent, imagine how much Nigerians spend in Ukraine. Imagine that amount of money being spent within the country.
Well, we can only imagine. But until, like I've always said, until the federal government looks at education as another aspect of diversification of Nigeria's economy, we might not have the needed attention. Education in Nigeria might not get the needed attention it deserves, because to a large extent, they see it as maybe doing us a favor. I don't see why employees should demand for certain things to be done. It's not in the place of the lecturers to demand for revitalization of universities. I think they are just employees of the government. Government should know that this aspect of their investment should come up to a standard where it's sellable to people from other climes, sellable to the international communities and all of that. So if we get into a situation where an employee would have to, be going on strike to demand of certain necessities that should be done at a particular for a particular thing at a particular time, then you might just see that it will turn to redundancy, because if an employer does not see the need to get something fixed, I mean, who does better?
Nobody does better than the owner of the business. And then it goes to affect the persons working for you in the business when you don't provide the right tools. And any person who loves his job would want to have the right tools to deliver. Because whether or not
ASU wants the right tools.
Okay.
ASU have made their demands. ASU have deployed all means of negotiation. ASU have gone on the round table several times. ASU have gone into an MOU with the government, and the other part of the bargain wasn't kept, so they turned it to an MOA. They want to take action. And like we've always said, it is that strike is the last resort. So it means other means have been exhausted without achieving anything. So ASU has to go on strike to demand that their employer actually comes to the rescue of some dilapidated facilities and all the demands that's on the table at the moment.
And that is the right thing to do, because guess what? If peradventure, we've not seen or heard any of those such comments here, but I just think, one, that the federal government might turn to blame the poor educational system on the lecturers.
Well,
or their inability to
they
teach
might not,
the students well.
they might not be totally exonerated from that, because to a large extent they have a part to play. Now, when you talk about quality education, maybe you understand the need. A lot of lecturers don't do research. Quite sadly, they hold one lecture note from generation to generation. They hardly will you see improved version or yearly. There should be a time limit to which a particular lecture note should expire or should be upgraded based on new development and technologies in any field. But you see that these people, they're not living up to their expectation on their path.
I beg to differ. I know there are lots of lecturers who do not subscribe to advancement. They don't buy innovation. They don't go with the ICT era and the changes that it has brought. I know that there are some lecturers like that, but there are other lecturers who are very dedicated, very committed, very devoted
what is the ratio?
to their
what
job.
Is the percentage?
A greater percentage of them. I've not done any research to know exactly what statistics to use, but I know because I have relationship with a couple of lecturers. Take for instance, University of I have friends who are lecturers, and I know these are young persons who are very passionate and committed about their job. They go on to the extent of using sometimes their personal funds. And by the way, most of those persons are persons who have not stick to just having to wait for their monthly pay.
I know there's always that deal at the instance, like using personal funds. A lot of times when people begin a job with all passion, they put in their best, and at some point when they feel maybe the government perhaps is not reciprocating the gestures, or maybe they feel weird that something should be provided like what ASU is demanding from government, you might see that shrink.
So who is to blame then?
Well, who is to blame? I think the Nigerian students will have to answer to that. But at this point, let's head straight to the news brief desk and get to find out what is happening, other issues happening around Nigeria and beyond. Please stay.
Come, Ukpabio. Iyayo. Ukpabio. Iyayo. Ukpabio. Iyayo.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is
my lord.
this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Come, Ukpabio.
Iyayo.
Ukpabio.
Iyayo.
Ukpabio.
Iyayo.
states and governments, Secretary General, distinguished delegates.
Voting for Spectrum TV to recover for the lapses counting.
Good morning. Here's the Spectrum TV news brief at this time. I am Bright James. First in our news today is a report that the federal government has reiterated that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari will never be a threat to the media. The Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, gave the assurance when a delegation from the International Press Institute, Nigeria, paid him a courtesy visit in Abuja. Meanwhile, federal government has commenced emergency repair works on Woburn Bridge, which was razed by a fire on March 23rd. The federal controller who works in Lagos State, Lokodai Popola, announced this when he led officials of the ministry of the Nigerian Society of Engineers on a technical visit to the bridge. Away from that, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo will today host members of the All Progressives Congress APC caucus at the House of Representatives to Iftar, which is the break of fast for Muslims. The Vice President, who has declared to contest the 2023 presidential ticket of the APC, is expected to use the occasion to formally inform the lawmakers of his intention. Still in politics, Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) has published the final list of candidates contesting the Osun governorship election in compliance with the Electoral Act. The Commission enjoined any political party whose candidate was missing from the list to notify it through a letter signed by the Chairman and Secretary. In health, National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control (NAFDAC) has stopped the shipment of more than 80 medicine products from China and India over fraudulent activities by the manufacturers. This is as Nigeria is set to begin the production of vaccines by the end of 2022. Now to the foreign scene, where Russian President Vladimir Putin has declared that peace talks have reached a dead-end situation after Ukraine made allegations about war crimes. In a rare public appearance, Putin dismissed the discovery of dead bodies lying in the streets in the Ukrainian town of Bucha as fake and insisted that the Russian military's goal in Ukraine were noble. Now to sport, where former world #1 Kim Clijsters has retired from professional tennis. The four-time Grand Slam winner, who retired twice in her career in 2007, 2012, returned to action in February 2020, but did not win a single match. Details of this and more in our news bulletin at 12. Back now for the continuation of Rise and Shine.
General, distinguished delegates.
Voting for Spectrum TV to recover for the lapses counting.
The Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigeria Police Force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police.
No, my Lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My Lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My Lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my Lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is
my Lord.
this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my Lord. These cases are in court, my Lord. I'm just reminding your Lordship.
My Lord, sorry, my Lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
It's beautiful to be back, and we are glad to know that you're still there at the other end. And yes, Still rise and shine, reaching you live from the beautiful hills of Ibiakuran. And of course, we are going to just sink into the main issue of today, which is domestic violence. Of course, in the last few days, it's a phrase that has rang bell, that is ringing or still ringing bell in the public space because of the unfortunate demise of the gospel singer Osinachi. May also rest in peace. You know, Francis, quite a lot of dynamics have come out after the public announcement of our death. You know, a lot of things were hidden behind and a lot of things are coming forth. At this point, what we wonder, why was this not heard? Why did she speak up? Because it means she had gone through a lot over the years and was still able to keep quiet and still stay.
Well, getting to read about all of the information that have surfaced on the internet, it just for me goes to show how wicked the heart of man is. It goes to show how insensitive the society has become, or how barbaric the minds of individuals within the church environment, within the work environment, within our immediate environment where we live in, our neighbors. I've seen a comment from the neighbors who say Osinachi was always depressed. She always looked depressed. And then you're living with a person and you notice she's always depressed. What did you do to find out why she's always depressed? And if the husband has been beating her, then there is no way a person would be beating the wife that the neighbors will not know that such thing has been happening.
Have you heard
now?
No, you don't infringe on one's privacy. That is happening might not necessarily give one a right to interfere in such a case, except the person in concern perhaps Osinachi had sought for help. You know, we live in a society where a lot of times people are close together but so far apart. Yes, she might be a neighbor, but so busy chatting up with people around the world through her phone and completely absent-minded about what is happening around her environment. It's most likely the case in our generation now.
I know our generation is the phone generation. I know that even the older generation have gotten addicted, or have caught the bug of being addicted to being on the phone so much that you find older women, older men spend more time on the phone than with people around them. I know that is the reality on ground, but then there is no way anybody in this world would tell me that the neighbors didn't know what was happening. And if they didn't know what was happening, what actions did they take? You know, it's very heartening, it's very saddening to discover that at this time that we are in this world presently, that you still find people who go about their normal life even when there's somebody dying right beside them.
Yes, that in as much as that is,
we see that in accident occasions. We see that practically in every aspect, and that is why we will continue having scenarios such as this playing out. And I think at this point,
I hope we won't have it again.
No, we're going to have it. It's been there. One of the reasons I got very scared of getting into a relationship with a woman, or even aspiring to be a married man, was because of what I saw growing up. My father never raised his hand on my mother, so I heard. He had an issue with anger, but that anger never allowed him to touch his wife. No matter what. He could devour anybody. He could beat up 10 people at the same time, men, but he would never lay a hand on a woman, much more his wife.
You know, it has been proven that a lot of times, psychologically, what happens while growing up as a child, to a large extent, determines your attitude and your overall build-up as a grown man.
It determines that.
And of course, you would agree that quite a number of persons in these times lived through when they saw their fathers, you know, actually commit the same offense. And to a large extent, you know, when you find that a person is in an environment that is chaotic, environment that is not really sane, you know, Africans, you know, Nollywood thing, you would see how married couples will abuse themselves, fight, this one will run, and all of that. It goes a long way to sink some information, store some information, however negative or positive, in the brains of a lot of young ones. And they grew up with that mentality and feel, yes, it's okay to do this. And most times before this happens, there's always issues of hierarchy, issues of who is the boss, issues of who detects what happens at what time, issues of who should command respect. And African society as a whole was built in a way that women were taught to be obedient, regardless of what decision is being made, regardless of whether you're comfortable with such decisions or not. You are just being forced to obey. And of course, you know, the religion is not doing any good. They will preach submission, and I don't know which verse of the Bible they preach about, because when I see mine, I see submitting yourself one to another, like the submission is supposed to be a two-way thing. Then you will see them preach submission. Okay, when last did I attend a marriage ceremony? I think I attended over the weekend on Saturday precisely, and I got so offended by the sermon because they were just hammering submission. If peradventure you marry today and tomorrow now your husband does not love you again, what would be the issue? It's because you are not submissive. And you know, that to a large extent sinks into the minds of every man that yes, this woman is supposed to be like a zombie. Whatever I say, she has to do it. If she doesn't do it, it means she's not submissive. And if she's not submissive, then I have the right to spank her and all of that. So it's a culture. It needs a total rehaul. It needs a total reorientation of the mindset of a lot of men. And it should start from the church. I think whoever is masterminding that verse of the Bible should go and teach men how to love. And if Christ actually said, love your wife as Christ loved the church. And now if you want to equate the love of Christ for the church, you will see that that love actually does not hurt. And once the sermon changes in the church, it will go a long way to correct the African culture of actually trying to put down the woman in a place of a zombie. And I don't understand. I don't understand how we got into this, but I think we need a complete rehaul of the orientation and the psychic of men, because it has eaten deep into the children, and it has gone, I don't know where to start from, but I think the next generation has to get it right.
Well, let me start this way. The problem that has been in existence for decades and might not go away, I'm not seeing it go away anytime soon.
The churches can help.
It's simple. You have a culture. Before Christianity came to Africa, our culture was there.
Absolutely.
And our culture had taught women to think they do not have right to speak, they do not have right to feelings, they do not have right to expressions, they do not have right to pursue an ambition or be vision driven. They do not have practically no right to do anything. That even from the home, a mother gives birth or a father has 2 or 3 children, and the female children are being thought to do practically everything in the house, and the male just sits like one ready-made toy and waits for everything to be put in place before he wakes up to go take care of maybe Gosha, and then the food has been made. He practically does nothing. And then the women in the family are being taught, even the elderly ones, if the boy is like the 2nd or the 3rd child who came after the female children, that they are supposed to take care of the brother. But the brother is not supposed to take care of the sisters. And then you graduate into the church environment, and the pastor speaks the Bible and interprets to suit himself as a man.
Yes, absolutely.
And then the woman sits in church and listens to the rubbish that is being preached to her without questioning. Now, inasmuch as this might sound weird coming from a man, I believe every right-thinking man at this point must have understood, like you rightly say, that love is a two-way thing. I'm not disputing the fact that the man is the head of the family and that the woman is supposed primarily to submit to the husband. But guess what? When it comes to love, it's a two-way thing. That is where communication comes in. That is where dialogue comes in. That is where compromises comes in. So a situation where you find a woman refuses, or a woman surrenders herself to all of the inhuman treatment just because of tradition at this stage, I would say, is her fault. A situation where a woman allows a pastor, and by the way, oftentimes, I would say pastors are like the biggest problems we have in the society.
Absolutely. I think they've turned out to be like one of the biggest problems that we have.
Like the guys we had on one of the shows that talked about, if we have 1,000 church as at today, we should have a more peaceful society. We should have a more saner society. We should have a society where people are more compassionate towards each other, where people are more concerned about the well-being of each other other than themselves. We should have a society where we have less criminal-minded individuals. No. But the reverse is the case. Why? Because the church that is supposed to preach repentance, the church that is supposed to preach knowledge, the church that is supposed to guide the people away from sin is preaching just prosperity.
Well, I'm
focusing
smiling.
on the basic things.
Francis, I'm smiling because you're talking about all what the churches should do. But come on, unemployment in Nigeria has, eaten deep into the society's fiber, so that
and the church has become a business.
A lot of persons, and now rather than attend tertiary institution or polytechnics to acquire knowledge, they can work for them to be innovative in other, dimensions. They are attending theological schools. They're trying to get jobs as a pastor, regardless of whether you have the calling or not. So it has become more of an entrepreneurial, adventure for a lot of people.
I totally agree with you.
So anybody can become a pastor. I can decide to set up my room and start praying. I mean, the Bible is accessible to anybody. So I can just begin to pray. And if I know, like God knows what, like God says and all of that, then yes, I might have some good followership. And regardless of whether or not I'm telling the truth, people will come, they would pray, and I'll ask for tithe and offering. Take away tithe and offering from the churches, then you will know that a lot of churches would not stand.
Now, during the lockdown period,
that being the case, I feel there's no much passion coming from the religious leaders. Now, if you're preaching submission, if you're preaching to couples, I think the whole scriptures, every religious figure would understand that the whole scriptures, regardless of which portion, which testament, is boiled down, is summarized in one. Do unto others what you want them to do to you. Yes, you are a man. I think there's no difference between a man or a woman in the scriptures, because they would say men and all. At some points, the scripture will use men as referring to both humans, both male and female. And then if that is the case, if you do to a woman what you will not want someone to do to you, then that is bad. That is bad. And if we just preach just that one gospel, I think everybody will have a change of attitude towards everything they do. Okay, you are beating up a woman because she has a different opinion to what you think. Would you want another person to beat you up because you share a different opinion? I mean, where comes the freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of... I mean, you cannot unbundle a human being that came with a purpose. You don't know why God sent them here. If women didn't actually have a vision or a mission on earth, I don't think God would have planted a woman on earth. I don't think that the vision or the mission of a woman on earth is just to come and live a zombie life, obeying one man throughout the rest of our lives. So I think to a large extent, education is also very important. Who you are dealing with is also very important. I know you're smiling because some persons might be educated and still behaves like like people who didn't use chalk in school. But then, to a large extent, education, it depends on what kind of education you access. And anger management is very important. A lot of persons don't know how to manage themselves. And yes, you don't know how to manage yourself, and you want to go and marry. I saw someone put up a post on social media. The person said, if you know you are not going to submit to your husband as a woman, do not marry. And I'm like wondering, this person should be arrested in the first place, because that is one sign of an abuser. That person is most likely going to beat up a woman because the woman does not share his opinion at a particular time. Now, that is one sign. Those that how to fish them out, he should be arrested. Because when you talk about being submissive, I think it's about dialogue. The Bible calls them partners. And if you have a partner, would you want your partner to just agree to all what you are saying, hook, line, and sinker? Okay, like a robot. Okay, this is what we are going to do. Yes. I think you shouldn't go out today. You have to stay. Yes. How would you enjoy to have such a robotic image in the house? I mean, it's absurd.
Well, to you it's absurd, but to some persons that is the life some persons were born to live. But here's the deal. We're in the 21st century, and a lot of dynamics have changed. There's a lot of information. And reading about Osinachi's death and the circumstances surrounding it, I don't want to blame just one person. I blame everybody.
No, it's the entire society.
It's cycled from her family to the church to the people she had contact with, to work with. There is no way you would see a depressed man or a depressed woman, or a woman or man who is going through something that you would not know, unless you're somebody who doesn't pay attention. And even when you don't pay attention to other persons, once it is somebody that is close to you, you definitely would know when that person is happy, when things are going well with the person, or when things are not going well. And at that point, it is your duty, it is your responsibility to ask questions. And whether or not you ask questions, those signs will help you. Sometimes a lot of persons who are in abusive relationship, even from courting or dating stages, would see the signs but would not want to walk away, would refuse to even pay attention to the dangers they are seeing, for obvious reasons, which oftentimes is basically material.
Not just material.
But then
there are some persons who feel maybe they think they're at a certain age that they should settle down, and family pressure is on them to settle down. Yes, you are in this relationship. It's not really convenient because you've already seen the signs. But yes, he might possibly, settle down with you finally. And considering the pressure in at your background, where's the man? When are you going to get married and all of that? And the pressure in the society. And then a woman is talked to reason like, okay, but where would I have another person? Oh, this is how old I am, and all those thoughts come to play, and the person will be like, okay, perhaps it's going to change in the long run. Let me give it a try, and then you go in.
It's going to change in the long run. Now,
most times you would, a lot of persons who have had first-hand experiences with these things might agree with you to a large extent, might agree with me to a large extent, because the society is not helping. The society is not helping, especially when it comes to, time limits and they take marriage in Africa, in Nigeria precisely, as one big achievement that, everybody has. And if you don't achieve it, you're a failure in life.
My dear, marriage is a big achievement, no doubt. Just like every other major achievement in life. But guess what? If you are not achieving, your peers may have achieved marriage at 20. Others may have achieved at 25. Others may have achieved at 30, and you're still there. You haven't. It doesn't change the dynamics. It doesn't change the fact. It doesn't change the reality on ground. That you have not been able to achieve it at the age the different persons have doesn't make you a failure. Because guess what? You didn't start school the same time with your colleagues or with your mates. You didn't graduate the same time with them. You didn't get a job the same time with them. So you definitely will not marry the same time with them.
It's just a factor, a contributive factor to this
Yes,
dynamics.
those are contributive factors. But then, between you, your family, the society, the church, who suffers most with the decisions that you make? When you sit down to think and consider, oh, what is the pastor going to say? What is the church going to say? What are my colleagues going to say? What are my family members going to say? Oh, my uncle's son or my uncle's daughter has done this. One of the things I have problem with in life that I don't even want to hear is when you begin to tell me, that is your mate is doing this, or your mate is doing that, or your mate have done this, and you're still not. I never want, once you mention that, you and me, we become enemies. Because you will not pressure me into things that will be against my well-being. Because you think my mates have achieved and I should join the line.
That is for you that is mentally strong. You would agree that we have a lot of persons out there who might not be mentally strong to take in all this, to be able to, distinguish what is pressure and what is not good for them. To be able to know, yes, they are pressuring me, but they cannot force me into doing what I don't want to do. We don't have a lot of them who has that self-determination to do the right thing. But then I feel like I've always said, I believe the church should do better. I feel the church should not continue at this point to boost men's ego with a sermon of submission. I feel if we must be the head, let us emulate Christ. If the man must be the head, I don't think the head can hurt the leg to be the head. I don't think the head needs to do anything extraordinary to tell my hand that, yo, I'm the head. I don't think that's the dynamics. Men should learn to emulate Jesus Christ. If actually they are Christians, because he is the model for Christianity. This man was a servant leader while on earth. He was able to pick water and wash his disciples' feet because he was the head. I mean, he was the leader. He was God even while on earth, but he was able to do that. Men should be taught humility. Morals are lacking in African men. African men truly lack morals. And egocentric human beings are just everywhere. They just want to boost their ego. They want someone to, worship them. They just want, I don't know how they feel when, someone said, how do you feel when you get to the house and you're trying to act like a bossy father, and once you enter the living room, your children, your wife, everybody just disappears, regardless of what they were doing, whether they're watching TV or playing. Once you are there, they just disappear, and you're feeling, yo, I'm feeling it. Like I'm the boss, I'm the mayor, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
You should be weeping for yourself at that point, because you just look horrific.
Well, it's a pathetic thing, but here's the deal. The church is not going to do anything.
It's about time they stand up to the challenge.
Regrettably, I know a lot of pastors watching this might want to come at me, but the truth remains that the church is not going to do anything. Or primarily, majority of persons who carry the tag church or pastor or religious leaders are not going to be able to do anything because we are just very selfish. Oftentimes, I would say one of the worst group of human beings on planet are persons who have, by accident, wear the tag of pastorship, of pastoring or teaching people within the religious sector. Why? Because they are not spiritual minded, they're not spirit made, they're flesh made, they're human made, they're culture made, they're material driven or material made. Like you rightly said, I think I recounted a situation where I had some interaction with some pastors and they say, oh, you know what, man of God, you can preach the gospel of Christ, but in this generation we preach Christ and he takes the glory when we have the chance to and we make the money. So it's basically a business. And fortunately, the Nigerian system makes it possible for persons to just wake up and you go register a church just like you would register a business. And there's no strings attached to it. So if persons are able to register a church, like businesses are being registered, so you cannot stop them from doing anything. At the end of the day, it's basically more or less like gaining profit or being after the profit. Now, like Christ had said during his time on earth, that there's a difference. There's a big difference between a religious person and a Christian. Those two are two different things. You can be religious but not be Christian. But you cannot be a Christian without being religious. What we have are religious leaders, not Christian leaders. And until we have that spiritual revival where religious leaders become Christian leaders, what we need is not going to come to bear. The gospel of Christ is not a gospel that puts another person in danger and projects the other person to safety. The gospel of Christ places everybody at par where everybody's interest becomes a priority. And God says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And then those were the two commandments. And then it summed it up because he realized the selfishness of human beings. And he said, love your neighbor just as I have loved you. And in my definition, the number one person who should be your neighbor is your spouse. So if your love in this world is not felt through your spouse, if persons don't look at your spouse, whether you're a man or a woman, and see your love radiate through that person, then you're failed.
Now, there's always this argument in the public space, especially among some men folks who say that perhaps if the woman is submissive, the man will be able to love. Now, I don't see any sequential arrangement of what should be done first before the other thing is being done in the Bible. As far as the Bible is concerned, the Bible did not say until a woman submits before the man loves. On the contrary, I would say there's no way a woman would not be submissive to someone she loves. Before a relationship gets sour or before a marriage gets sour, something must happen. And at that point, if a man would stoop down and leave ego and just use the right words or the right approach to address that issue, it might not generate to what would make a woman to be rebellious.
Okay. Now, let me take you on this way. You're a woman, right?
Well,
I know at some point I've said that women are the biggest problem beside the men.
Oh yeah.
Now,
I don't agree to that, as a matter of fact.
Let's go it this way. You're a woman. You have sisters?
Absolutely.
You have brothers?
Beautiful ones. Yes,
Now,
I do.
What is your first reaction when your brother brings a woman to the house?
My first
And
reaction.
you walk into the house.
Okay.
And you're seeing your brother, the girlfriend is probably seated, you know, with her nails well made, lashes, you know, she's looking all glammed up.
How
and
about
then,
you ask my mother and leave me, because I was such a fan.
and now you're walking in, and then you're seeing your brother maybe sweeping the floor
Okay.
while his alleged girlfriend or wife is seated.
Okay.
What is the first reaction?
First reaction for me,
Yes.
I'll join her to say, hey, what are you doing?
Okay. First reactions for you.
Okay.
But most women would at that point consider their brothers a weakling.
Weakling in what
Most
sense?
women
When they're happy,
would
probably chatting.
Hold on. Most women would at that point feel the wife is controlling the husband. Most women would at that point begin to lash out on the brother for being weak, for not being able to be the man of the house.
Well, I've always had sentiments for women.
For
I
not
don't
being
know.
able to control the wife. Most African
Not being
women
able to control the
would
wife.
have that mindset.
You would say women, yes, not ladies,
Most
because
women.
we had a lot of them in the you know, our mothers in the 80s.
And even ladies, today's ladies, I'm talking about today's ladies. Have you ever seen a situation where a brother is trying to probably getting to marry, and then the girls in the family are not at peace with the young woman coming into the family?
In as much as that's another angle to this. Yes, it's another angle. I don't know at what point we agreed that domestic chores are basically for women. I don't know at what point we came to that consciousness that it is a taboo for a man to actually do stuff. But I know the kind of people I have. I know my brother. My brother in the first place, or my brothers in the first place, do not like a place that is not ideal. You start to know from his car, because if you enter my brother's car and you have your fruit daddy, you will have to pack you and get the foot mat out to clean it before we now move. So it's as critical as that for some of my brothers. But then looking at it from this angle, we could all, if every individual tries to, that's within the home now, you do something. Not that you're going to sweep, but if you are available at that time, you stand in to do the chores. I think if every African or Nigerian can come to that consciousness of, yes, I did this mess, let me fix it. And not because I'm the man, have messed up, hey, someone fix it. Yes, sometimes you can call someone to fix it. But if you're not busy and you don't have what to do at the moment, I don't see why you shouldn't take your glass back to the kitchen.
And that is another dream that might not just happen for a majority of men. Why? Because all of the trainings we have comes from the family.
No,
So
the dynamics is going to change, because the mothers of this generation, trust me, my boy is not taking those privileges.
Very few mothers are doing what you are doing.
No, it's not
because
going to work.
I have seen mothers
I'm
of
in
this
the kitchen,
generation.
so all three, they must be there. Whatever I'm doing, I share equal responsibilities to what you can do. So you need to see my boy struggle to do something.
Congratulations.
Mommy, let me help you. I say,
because
yeah.
you're doing the right thing. And then there are some women who are equally doing
Not
the
just
right
me.
thing.
I know there are a lot of women who have awakened to that consciousness that our boys were not treated. You know, they were not given the right morals. You know, our mothers kind of, you know, push, sit well, you're a woman, you're going to marry. Okay, dress properly, you're a woman. Okay, sweep the floor so that you sweep for your husband. So all that was a consciousness that sunk into the children, and they grew up with that mentality. So it's an ethical reorientation. And like I said, I feel the next generation might get it right.
Honestly, I want to share your hope right now, but considering the level, the studies, okay, there's no research so far, but from observation, a lot of young women of this age are still repeating the mistakes of our mothers' past. When you train your female children and leave the male children, you are creating a monster for another person's child.
Not another person's child. Just so it's an exchange thing. you're training we all have male children. I have, you have, the other person has, and we all are busy training the female children. Chances are that my daughter would live to come marry your untrained son, and your untrained son will live to come marry my daughter, and we still keep creating a chaotic society.
It's the same thing.
So it's a reality that has done on African women. It's a reality that's done on us as Nigerians. And if every woman out there would train a child and still be pampering, doing all, yes, it is right. There's some privileges occurred to men. Men, to a large extent, I don't see what privilege should be accorded to a man and not be accorded to a woman. So let all grow together. Let all of them learn how to be compassionate. Let all of them learn how to be humble. You do something wrong, you get flogged, not because you're a boy or you are a girl. You just get disciplined for doing that. And that sinks in.
At this point, I would say if we are able to change our mindsets, men and women alike, we're able to intentionally do away with the old and make the new natural thing. If we intentionally refuse to allow religious practices of the past, religious interpretations, if we refuse to allow cultural interpretations that the woman is weak and the man is strong, and then the man feels because he's strong he can do and undo without being questioned, if we move away from a society where people are less selfish and more for the general interest, then we'll have a better society. Now, there's something that I grew up in my environment as a child that continually changed my thought pattern. We had issues, no doubt, but then I grew up in a community where if I walk by the street as a child and I do something bad and an elderly person sees me, he's going to spank me and he's going to drag me to my mother or drag me to my family house and report what it is I have done. And at that point, I probably might be crying. And at that point, my parents are not going to look at why I am being beaten. They're going to add theirs. So generally, we grew up in an environment where the community raised the children to be very attentive to morality, to be very attentive to care, to be very attentive to looking out for each other. I remember those days, if you're going to fetch firewood, we go in cliques. And before we leave the firewood bush, we must count. Because guess what? If you get back to the house and one person is missing, all of you will get back to the bush and go search for that one person. So you wouldn't want to take that long journey and get back to the house and then be sent back because you didn't pay attention to the number of persons you went out with.
Well,
so if we bring that into today's society, where I care about you, you care about me, I look out for you, you look out for me, and we break the barrier of saying, oh, it's his problem, it's her problem, and if he or she doesn't come asking for help, then I shouldn't interfere. I think at this point I would say Nigerians should borrow I saw a video last night on the social media where a white woman called an ambulance because she had a scream from the neighbor's house and somebody was like, oh my God, somebody help me, she just slammed. And then the next neighbor called the ambulance. By the time the ambulance got there, it took the person away. And then they're trying to interview the person that was in-house.
Francis, by what you're saying, I know it would take Nigerians, it would take this nation a lot to achieve this, because that just brought another dynamic to this scenario. Like someone is in trouble or an armed robber wrecks a particular place. I recall in our home, my husband placed a call to the police because we heard gunshots in our environment. And the police arrived. We heard a siren. They arrived about 2 a.m. or thereabouts, and then they placed a call again across to my husband to come out and identify why he called. I mean, who does that? 2 a.m., you are supposed to be a security person, you are armed, and then you want a civilian unarmed to come out to tell you, oh, who shot the gun? Who does that? So you calling an ambulance, yes, it might work for people outside this climb, but I think both the security agencies, because you might end up reporting a domestic abuse, a domestic violence case, and then you get implicated and indicted. These things happen in this country and all of that. Like you said, you saw someone who was by the roadside possibly beaten up and you try to save. And someone told me a story about a mob action that was about to take place. Then he called police, and then the police arrived, rescued the person, and then they wanted to know who actually placed the call to the police. And they stood there to call the same person's number. The guy said the phone rang, everybody turned. Then he had to quickly remove battery because he had this small phone, so he had to remove the battery. Because if they had revealed the identity of who placed the call across for that person to be rescued, then chances are that the mob action might come on the person, or they might put the person at risk. So I don't know how the orientation with the security personnel, but if we must be able to watch out for our neighbors to that regard, then a lot of things must be put in check within several MDS to ensure that the safety of who is reporting, or the safety, of course, of who is putting the call across is in check or is assured. Well, at this point, we'll go on a short break and take a report on domestic violence. And when we return, we might possibly have a guest on set. Please stay with us.
Come, Ukpabio. Iyayo. Ukpabio. Iyayo. Ukpabio. Iyayo.
Domestic violence, a term used to describe aggressive behavior within the home, typically involving the violent abuse of a partner or a spouse. While domestic abuse strikes couples of all races, religion, socioeconomic status, and sexual orientation, risk factors for men or women becoming victims or abusers includes poverty, lack of education, witnessing family violence as a child, having a low self-esteem or self-worth. Domestic violence is often seen as a result of the desire to gain and maintain power and control over an intimate partner. It has become another alarming issue that is prevalent across Africa. It is estimated that a third of all African women has experienced physical or sexual domestic violence. In addition, every 8 hours, a domestic partner kills a woman. Around 15% of African women have experienced this in a lifetime. Although there are no laws specifically enacted against domestic violence to be applicable in Nigeria, however, the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act passed in 2015 provides protection for a wide range of types of violence against women, including domestic violence. Being abused can leave you scarred and confused and ultimately lead to death. It is important to watch out for the warning signs. If you are afraid of your partner, that is a red flag. Fear has no place in a healthy relationship. The following information was provided by the Portland Women's Strength Program. Jealousy and possessiveness, controlling behaviors, quick involvement, unrealistic expectations, isolation, blaming others for problems, blaming others for your feelings, hypersensitivity, disrespectful or cruel to others, playful use of force during sex activities. When you see the signs, it is time to talk to someone for counseling and possibly break out of such relationship to avoid ultimate death.
Come, Ukpabio. Ukpabio. Ukpabio.
Domestic violence, a term used to describe aggressive behavior within the home, typically involving the violent abuse of a partner or a spouse. While domestic abuse strikes couples of all races, religion, socioeconomic status, and sexual orientation, risk factors for men or women becoming victims or abusers includes poverty, lack of education, witnessing family violence as a child, having a low self-esteem or self-worth. Domestic violence is often seen as a result of the desire to gain and maintain power and control over an intimate partner. It has become another alarming issue that is prevalent across Africa. It is estimated that a third of all African women has experienced physical or sexual domestic violence. In addition, every 8 hours, a domestic partner kills a woman. Around 15% of African women have experienced this in a lifetime. Although there are no laws specifically enacted against domestic violence to be applicable in Nigeria, however, the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act passed in 2015 provides protection for a wide range of types of violence against women, including domestic violence. Being abused can leave you scarred and confused and ultimately lead to death. It is important to watch out for the warning signs. If you are afraid of your partner, that is a red flag. Fear has no place in a healthy relationship. The following information was provided by the Portland Women's Strength Program. Jealousy and possessiveness, controlling behaviors, quick involvement, unrealistic expectations, isolation, blaming others for problems, blaming others for your feelings, hypersensitivity, disrespectful or cruel to others. glad to have you back. Yes, this is the Rise and Shine, reaching you live from the beautiful hills of Abiakuran. And we've been talking about domestic violence and how it affects the life of children in our society. Quite frankly, in the recent days, for few days now, we've been having a lot of information in public space, and there seems to be an awakening on the need to stop violence against women and to save the next generation of children from some psychological implication it might have on them. And of course, so joining us today to talk about this issue is a trained children teacher from Children Evangelical Ministry, and of course he is Nsikarabasi Sunday Udo. Great to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be part of the show.
Well, Francis, I'm quite excited to see that men that are more, out there lending a voice on domestic violence, and quite frankly, men are more of the abusers than women, and that 21st century men are waking up to the call. Nsikarabasi, how bad is the situation for children?
We cannot exactly say how bad, but bad is bad enough. And it's terrible. It's a lot, because for children, it's what molds them. Their environment is what molds them. Whatever they go through as young people is what they eventually become. So everything that happens in their environment is as important as that. So domestic violence affects them directly and adversely.
Okay.
So we know that like Osinachi's children have come out to say that their father reportedly, because we cannot certain at this point because the man hasn't spoken, that he used to make the mother go naked and have them watch while he's parading her around naked and beating them, and then that apart from that, they used to go to church. He will carry them inside the car, and then the mother will be left stranded in the sun, and they will drive past and they will just wave at the mother and pass. Now, for children who have undergone such orientation at such early stage, and probably for years, how can we go through the process of getting their mind off such negative impact?
Okay, so like you said, reportedly, it sounds like it's not true, right? But the fact is, okay, so I've been trained with Children Evangelism Ministries a long time ago. I've worked with the Children's Sunday School for a while, and these things are true. There's some things that children will tell you and you're like, is it in this world? But these things are true, and so the story might likely be true. And these things affect them. How do we get to help them? First of all, you have to be patient, you have to be intentional, and you have to be kind-hearted, because these children now become aggressive, they're unnecessarily anxious, they become agitated over every little thing, and then they seem to play back these things that they see in their environment. So as an adult that is not like their parent, for you to be able to help them, you have to be intentional about it, you have to be conscious, because there are some times that you'll be like, I'm tired, but you have to be intentional about it. Show them care, show them love, listen to them, give them the experience that they've not had in their space, and then eventually you start talking to them. This is how to not do this. This is not the right thing. Oh, I know this is what happens in your space, but no, this is not what should be.
Oh, well, I know that is an approach that is fair enough, but frankly, I would like to, dig deep into your experience.
Okay.
We understand that children talk a lot when they're among their peers, like in the children's section in churches, like in schools and all of that. What is the worst case scenario you've had from a child, and what has been the effects, the impact on the child's relationship or behavior in the space?
Okay, so there's a particular child that when they're having like lunch, when they're eating, all of a sudden you just see the child push the plate away, scatter everything on the floor. So it happened for a few times, and I'm like, something is wrong somewhere. So come, what happened? Why are you always say, my father used to do that? So it's like, maybe the father is eating and talking, and then he throws the meal away and then starts getting violent and all of that. And then I have another experience of an older friend. This one is actually a friend that she's outrightly insulting, disrespectful to especially men. And then if you are a man that is close to her, she doesn't let you pick the bills. She does the bills. So I noticed it and I tried to follow up. And then one day I intentionally said, okay, let me take you out. Took her out and then we did a few drinks. I paid. And then she started ordering another set. Almost equivalent to what I spent. And then she paid for it and I sat down and looked at her and went, there's something wrong with you. What happened to your childhood? And then we started talking and we realized that her dad was always abusing the mom and all of that, and that was because, and she felt that because the mom wasn't buoyant enough to be taking care of herself and happy, so she's like, no man can foot my bills, no man can do this for me, no man. So it affects her relationship with men, and she feels like, oh, these people, hey, they will insult you because you don't have your money. So she's out to get money by all means, to be an independent woman, to be on her own, and then she disrespects any man around her. It's as bad as that. There are many other stories.
Well, in the whole, you see that it has affected them psychologically. But in the ripple effect, what would you say as an expert? How would you say, in terms of meeting the child and relating to having knowledge of what is happening at the family level, is there any form of help that can be done to extend, to reach out? Because perhaps maybe the children of us in our team must have had these discussions in class. Or do you think there's something that the teachers would have done to succor the situation at home?
So I think that teachers, like I said, intentional teachers should, as a matter of factly, take detailed attention of the young people in their space. Try to talk to them. Sometimes they come to school gloomy. These things manifest in depression. Some of them don't interact with other children when other children are lively there. So you notice this, try to talk to them. Try to be their friend.
Now, what I'm asking is this. Do you think it's okay if you notice that a child is going through this behavioral attitude, bad behaviors as a result of abuse or violence in the house? Do you think it's in the place of a trainer like you, to lay a formal report in the police or maybe to any authorities that can help enumerate the situation at home?
Yes, I think it's our responsibility to do this because it affects the society at large in the end. So yes, if you notice this, first of all, interact with the child, get to understand, and please report. Because you're not just saving the child, you're saving the entire society. You're saving the future.
Okay, so like you rightly said, I think before you came on the show, we talked about the need for societies to be more responsible, to be more responsive to the things happening around us, and of course to be more intentional and deliberate in taking decisive decisions, and not to just say, okay, he's this problem, he's that problem, and because he or she is not asking for help, therefore we shouldn't go to help. Now, has there ever been a situation within your line of experience where you've actually seen a situation with a child and then go a step further to take the necessary measures to maybe notify the church authorities, for instance, and then probably the case gets to relevant security agencies? If there is, what was the experience like for you?
Okay, so this wasn't like someone in my space. It was a child in... I visited a friend in Port Harcourt and I noticed a child who was not okay. He was just radical in the environment, violent and all of that. And then I saw wounds all over the body. And I asked, and they said, oh, that the dad comes back, beats the mom, and then, of course, beats the children. And then we tried to, I called people. It wasn't, it wasn't in my space, so I couldn't really get around to people I would have loved to. And then I called a few people, and they were like, no, you have to stay out. That's how it is here. A lot of people say, it's their family, stay out of their family. And it was really traumatic because you could see that the child needed help. But at that time, the people in the environment could not help because everyone was like, no, so you dey be for this side, oh. That's how that man is. I don't want problem, oh. I don't want him to come and start attacking my own family. And that's how we lost it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful thing that we sit and talk about all of these issues. But at this point in time, I think for experts and for society, there's a lot that needs to be done.
Yeah,
and like you rightly mentioned, I mean, these things are happening to the children because the parents are involved. And it would be of no use, you would agree with me, if you take the child away and then begin to treat the child right, or begin to counsel the child, and then that child gets counseled and then returns to the same environment and continues to witness the same thing. How do you handle such scenario? How can we guarantee that if peradventure, because I know there are some churches, there are some scenarios where the school environment, for instance, I've been exposed as a teacher in a nursery and primary school environment where the school counseling or counselor begins to take the child and begins to counsel, or what your mom does is not right, or what your dad does is not right, and then they counsel the child, and the counseling just ends within the school environment, and that's all there is to it. So what would you advise in such scenarios for persons who would say, oh, my authority is limited to the school environment or to the church environment where I'm exposed to this child?
So it just goes back to a lot of work, because you're not going to be able to take this child out of the house, right? So you just know that you wait till the child returns to school and then you fire back. It's going to be an extra work, because you will deal with the child in school and then pray that whatever happens in the how many hours the child leaves you does not undo whatever you did, and then you wait to top up. I think basically that's what it is, because except there's a possibility of having a facility that you can move children to, which I don't know how practical that can be, but the only solution that I know is for you to keep instilling this.
It's practicable in other climes where,
yes,
where
but here,
a child is noticed to be amongst parents, then the government actually takes custody of the child away from that environment.
The government is in charge of this. The government is involved, and then when they notice this kind of things, they take the children away from you. But in this particular space, if you want to go and carry somebody's child now, it might be much more than you thought about. So I think it's just for us to keep talking to the children.
No, I feel talking to the children might actually expose the child to some risk factor, because quite frankly, children, as naive as they are, might not know when to talk in the house or when not to talk. For instance, you have an abusive man in the house who is always beating up the mother. And then at some point, the child might be crying and say, "Daddy, stop it, leave that," and all of that. And the man aggressively might have to spank the child as well. You shut up and all of that. These things happen sometimes, and we see them even in movies. But I feel having the school talk to the child, or there should be a redirection to how these issues are tackled, rather than counsel the child. The child getting some counseling shouldn't be, oh yes, what mom is doing is not right, or what dad is doing is not right, because chances are that they'll replay that at whenever such attacks happen. Chances are that you should work more on their psychic, on how to remain stable while approaching the issue from the parents' angle. Invites the parents to the school and said, yes, this is affecting your child's educational development. Yes, this attitude makes him moody in class. He doesn't learn, he doesn't remember because he's always sad. And to a parent who actually cares about the development of his or her child, might want to do something about it.
I like the last thing you said, to a parent who actually cares. Most toxic and violent people do not care about what happens to other people. All they care about is how they satisfy themselves. Is how it works. It's all about them. So most times, calling the parent to come and say, "Oh, your child is moody in school. This." You might also land the child in another abuse, because they will beat up the child. "Why did you go to school? Oh, you want to tell the world that I'm violent. You want to do this." So it's a dicey situation. But I feel like when you understand the situation, when you speak to the child and you know how the situation is, probably call the parent maybe that initial time and speak to the parents. You're able to feel their pulse and understand them and know whether this is the kind of parent that, okay, if we do use this method, it will work. And then understanding, when you talk to the parent and you understand them, you will now go back to the drawing board and say, okay, I want to deal with just the child. So you talk to the child and you tell the child, okay, when you go to the house, whatever happens, keep calm. Always recite this when this is happening. So maybe when your dad is fighting your mama, you cannot keep saying, "Oh, better days are coming. This is going to change." Just keep talking to yourself. Try to stay stable. Don't say anything. Don't fight your dad so that he will not fight you. Try to work with the child's psychic. But if you notice that the parents feel remorse and you know, they can actually change. You can now say, okay, let's involve the parent. Okay, don't do this, don't do that. Then you can now say, okay, we are trying to fix the child through the parents. So I feel it's just about understanding the situation and the persons involved.
Well, let's go on a short time while we take the report again, and then we'll close up on this conversation. We'll return after this.
Come, Ukpabio.
Iyayo.
Ukpabio.
Iyayo.
Ukpabio.
Iyayo.
Glad to have you back. Yes, this is your Rise and Shine, and sadly as it is, the conversation is actually, getting more intense, but we must find circle for the child, because we believe that the next generation have to get it right. Perhaps it was a fault of upbringing for present day youth. So the target is on getting the children safe to avoid a replay of violence as it is, or to a large extent minimize it. So yes, as a student teacher, I would like to take your last thought on this. What do you think is the way forward?
Way forward is for everybody, show love to people around you. If you see children act irrationally, please don't be fast to condemn and judge them. You do not know what they are going through. You not know what has been their foundation. You don't know what they go through on a daily. Try to be, I think everybody should be actively involved in this now. Try to interact with younger people around you. Try to find out why they're acting in a certain way and try to be helpful. Show love. So children who come out of these homes do not even know what love is. There are children that when they see parents come to school to carry their words and they hug them, it's strange because in their house, those kind of things don't happen. So once in a while, if you can extend a hug to other kids, please do, because they need it. And be intentional about talking to people so that you can be helpful to them. I think that's it.
Okay, I guess that pretty much says a lot. But before I let you go, there's an aspect that is lacking. I know that, like we've rightly mentioned, in other climes you have government create these situations. But I don't want to bother myself with that, because that would be like having a long walk to freedom. Yeah, we might not possibly get that coming out anytime soon. But then I'm more particular about what happens to these children when they cannot access help, and then they grow up with that mindset, they grow up with that mentality and become adults who eventually become husbands and wives, who eventually becomes fathers and mothers. How do we handle such scenarios?
So, in African society, we rely on, we fall back to religion. So I could say pray, because what happens to, the thing with growth, so this person is coming out from this background. This person is going to be a better version of this. So this person is going to be more toxic, probably with a lot of civilization helping out, with technology helping out. The person is going to be worse than this other person.
As an advanced version of toxic.
You got that. So I just think we should pray. God, may these people not enter our space. Oh, God, help them. Because I really don't know what can be done in this climate now. Because you cannot even take them away. You cannot. First of all, these people need to understand that there is a problem. They themselves need to know that there's a problem. They have a problem, first of all, before you can even say, okay, let's help them. And then what are the possible help channels in this space? There's just a few, and that is just talking. And most times it doesn't work. Okay. You need to take them out of
the environment.
There are
some NGOs, they are responsible. I know for lack of modalities, we couldn't have a guest who was supposed to be here, but then she's an NGO. She runs an NGO that handles cases of these children, like a help center that can actually facilitate
take
that,
them out of the
take
home?
them out, and yes. And so
Awesome.
I feel to a large extent people should try to research to get to
Support,
find
yes.
out and then come up, or
If there are
individuals
NGOs like
can
that,
come
they
up
can
with other
support
NGOs.
them.
Yeah.
They can support, personally, I think the thing that happens in this climate, we must help ourselves. So if we see an NGO like that, please invest in them, build safe houses for them, build hospitals for them, support them financially. So we don't have to say, okay, let's wait for governments because, okay, so let's do it individually with these NGOs, bring out these people, put them in a safe space where they can think sane thoughts, and then I think that's a progress.
Okay.
Well,
one last thing, since you're coming from the church, do you think the church does enough in terms of counseling for intending couples to give them the right footing to get into better relationships, regardless or not they had a bad upbringing?
Do I think the church does enough? Enough.
Your pastor will come after you.
So
but regardless, you still have to give a response. You still have to give a response to that.
Yes, of course. The word enough depends on where you're coming from. So enough could be enough at a particular point, but not enough at another. Now, I think the church is trying, but can do better, because some churches do a month's counseling or some weeks counseling for marriage, and sometimes they wait for other couples.
Does it really need to wait for counseling? What happens to the daily preaching?
I'm coming to that. So I think they should be now more intense with these things. The church also has to talk about these things on the altar. The pastors have to preach it. They have, in fact, just like we have miracle crusades, we should also have events in church that basically talk about violence, abuse, how to avoid it, how to help yourself. Because now, most of these people can be afraid of pastors sometimes. So I think that if the pastors are more intentional about these conversations, it might help to an extent.
Do you think a simple repentant message can solve a greater deal of these problems?
No. A simple give your life to Christ message. Most of these people have given their lives to Christ, but their characters, their I don't know how to explain this. Their
disposition
is not Christ-like.
How can you give your life to Christ and don't have a disposition of a Christ-like
it's a conscious work,
we
but we're
wanted
not
to
about
wrap
to
up
do
on
church.
this
But we are not about to do
conversation,
church. We are not about to do church today, because giving your life to Christ is a conscious work. You have to start changing patterns and all of that.
And by that, churches should be saddled with the responsibility of molding, just like
Helping
you
them
have,
work.
yes, helping them work the work and not leaving their eyes on the target, because it's not about saying raise up your hand, recite this, and yes, you are born again. Praise
Yes.
God for you, hallelujah.
Yeah, so because
and then tell the person how to grow in Christendom. Tell the person how to overcome anger. These are processes, and there's something called sanctification in Christendom, a point where you actually have a good heart. Do you think the church is missing out on such messages?
I wanted to say this. So the church leaves some of these conversations for some churches, like, okay, for like churches who do single ish, they say, oh, those churches, that's their specialty. No, they shouldn't leave it to some churches and say, oh, that pastor, that's their ministry. Instead, let's have, in my church, in your church, let's have maybe a day in the month that we say, okay, we are talking about the family. Violence in the family, bringing your children up in the fear of God.
That would sound like a seminar topic.
Probably. If it has to be a seminar, let it be. If it has to be a special service, let it be. If it has to be a special session in the church service, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just like we take 10 minutes to do warfare prayers, we can take 5 minutes to, talk to the church about these things.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us
You're
this
welcome.
morning.
It's a pleasure.
It was nice having you, and we hope that to a large extent the children, the upcoming generation would actually, be eluded with the information that you have dispersed, and also a lot of persons will know how to relate with them and to get them out of that psychic negative mentality that they might be growing up with. But well, yes, this is where we wrap up on this particular session, but we'll be back, Francis, right?
Yeah, definitely will be back.
Of course, to have it a wrap on Rise and Shine Midweek Edition. So don't go away.
police force, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian Police Force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian Police Force.
No, my Lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My Lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My Lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our
Is
matters.
this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my Lord, but you can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is
my Lord.
this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my Lord. These cases are in court, my Lord. I'm just reminding your Lordship.
My Lord, sorry, my Lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Yes, good to have you back. And as sad as it is, I hope that a thing or two was learned and that the next person, well, I don't know if Francis actually wants to cry. He looks so sad about the situation.
Well, I'm not going to cry because crying doesn't solve any problem. I'm not going to scream because it's not going to solve any problem. I can talk from today till tomorrow, yes, because to a large extent to that one person who pays attention and gets to hear what I have to say, or what we have to share, and what people are saying all around the right things, and then choose to implement them, that one person, we must have been able to save at least that one person.
Absolutely.
Here's the deal. I've never subscribed to crying for anything in life except the happy tears, you know, because I know it's not going to solve any situation. And when we're talking about domestic violence, I mean, we've seen these things from over time. I would always tell somebody one of the reasons I had fears and still have fears getting into marriage most times is basically because of what I've seen around my environment, not primarily within my family because we didn't have that. But then I've witnessed a person being beaten to death by her husband. I've seen marriage being torn apart because initially the entirety of the neighborhood.
Why would you, as a man, you know, the ratio of abuse coming from women is kind of slim.
I've seen abuses from both sides, my dear.
Oh, wow.
I've seen situations where the entirety of the neighborhood used to think.
I'm just imagining the society, how it was for you growing up. Then.
Like the whole neighborhood used to feel that the husband was the one beating the wife. And this particular group of families, the fight will always happen between 12 and 3 a.m. And then the doors are always tightly locked, so nobody gets to penetrate until they were done beating themselves up.
They were
and
exhausted
they were tired
fighting.
and exhausted from fighting. Okay.
Oh my God! Now that sounds funny.
You just see everything just calms down. But then something happened to one of the families. One of the days, I think that the neighborhoods had enough of the screaming, and it was immediately after a husband actually beat and killed a wife, and so within that time, the neighborhood became more conscious. So when this one happened again, it was like everybody didn't want to see a repeat of what has just happened, so they had to force the door open. And lo and behold, it was the woman beating the man.
Oh, well.
And that led to the end of that marriage. And guess what? The children are suffering up till date because the father withdrew everything from training the children, and the wife, who didn't have any means of livelihood, could not afford
but
to
there's
send
no
the children
point.
to school.
There's no point that you have an argument with your spouse and the children have to suffer. Why would you withdraw your fatherly role from a child because the mother, or you're no longer in terms with the mother, or you're no longer in the marriage together with the
But
mother?
you have to
that
understand
shouldn't
that
be
this
the
is how
case in this.
most men in Africa think.
Well, that's
if I
where
train the child, he's going to take the training and he's going to take care of the mother as well.
Oh,
So
well.
the man doesn't want that. So what do I do?
It's myopic
I
as
withdraw.
it is, but I think this is where government would have to come in, and this is where agencies would have to come in to save the child, and parents should be held responsible for the children. I mean, the child did no wrong coming through them, because the child didn't choose with which family he wishes or she wishes to belong. She just came like that, regardless, and she unfortunately landed in such a hand, and then she shouldn't be held responsible and she shouldn't suffer for that. Such a father should be arrested. Such a father should be arrested, yes. But at this point, we'll quickly take the funny video before the quote of the day.
Kwandam, battery, kwandam, motor, everything kwandam. What? Cho. Sky, my name is no waste. Call me kwandam or Seriki.
Don't waste customer time.
That's why she know what I say.
I bring better market too.
But tell me so one say something. I just the waste they're doing. Now don't get in the quote. What you want to sell?
Come follow me buy something. Listen to what you.
You don't want bush. The second happy. One say go come aside.
Okay, make me come meet you for the Abi. No wahala now. Better markets.
Run. So I now phone. What type of phone? This one I never said.
This one original 13 Pro Max.
What type of phone is 13 Pro?
iPhone.
Oh, iPhones.
You were not informed too.
No, wow.
Oh, I bring money also, so sharp.
I'm having tower. How much they selling me?
Bring 5K.
What is 5K?
5,000 naira.
Kai? For waiting, post him up. Kai, you know, serious to sell.
Oh, yeah, nah, sorry, nah. How much you want buy?
I give you 1.5.
You be mumu.
Bring money.
Run.
No, they waste my time. I'm going to do business sharp.
I just say like that. No go price.
You never spell it.
You know them amount to buy. You work well 1.4.
Bring money. Just bring money. You know sharp for business.
This boy, she's your own.
My father get.
I don't call because I'm buying for you. The
customer is right. You want to collect. Which kind of the shop?
I know my lady. Catch you do work at the because I want to buy for you. The money.
Sorry.
Take your phone.
No verse.
You go say 1 tiri. Take it.
Bring money. Sorry.
Take. I will give you 1 2. You don't come by like
1 2. Yeah, sorry. Now they don't feel play with you.
I know. Get felon to buy phone today. I might go sell for 1,000.
What?
What say?
I don't blame you. Can't take 1,000. Take.
Now me don't buy kwandon Samsung before for 30 naira. I saw I kwando do and had a person kwandon for the buy.
Come on, 1,000. You're the 2. If you want to count 1 million, you come
take it. And I'll pack up
I blame your father.
Hello. Why the tail on it?
On waiting.
I do is she know the on.
I want to on. I go buy iPhone 1,000 naira. They expect.
I me tell you, sir. I don't buy Samsung where she big. You pass this one 30 naira.
Oga, this for not the on. You can know.
Take. If you know the on, you know you sell it. Take. Give me more money. Take.
Oga, later.
Kai. It is the flow with you. Kai, collect your phone. You come on.
Oga, you don't buy. Cut is not the return anything when they follow cut is buy.
That one I lie. If you know the return before you go return it.
You follow me buy something. You want the challenge.
When you put it out, give me more money. Take it. Give me more money. You don't want.
I don't blame you.
Now me too, I don't blame you.
I blame Nigeria. I blame your father.
Now your papa come and she blame.
Down Buruba. See ya.
Wow, look at see. This one she done mad. I go do with you for this area. My boss she go do with you. I go put you you go see.
In phone, what even carry? No, even fine.
Kai, come give me my phone.
Your father, I don't achieve her.
He don't achieve me. He don't take say now you got to go see bandits today.
Well, country is hard is not an excuse to engage in illicit practices. Man, this is funny, but it goes a long way to show that until you know and understand what it takes to buy the value of a particular thing, you might not know how to use that thing.
Definitely. Obviously, the guy actually probably must have picked the phone from somebody and doesn't know how much that phone is worth, so he can, let it go for whatever the price. And I think at that point, all he wants is just a little money to satisfy whatever cravings and probably hunger or some illicit drugs and all of that.
Well,
the Aboki, on the other hand, the scrap buyer, I wouldn't want to comment on him.
Well, I think it deserves what he got, because it's about time we stop buying some phones or items that we know are not coming from the right source, because if we're not buying, chances are that the hoodlums will not be picking it. But time is against us. The quote of the day. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. Yes, when you love what you do, you're going to put in your effort, you put in passion, and you get it done real fast and in the best possible way.
Steve Jobs just said it all.
Yeah.
You can't do anything if you don't love that thing. You can't work out, you can't be excelling at anything unless you love it enough to commit your all to excellence. And yes, that's the best way to go.
Of course, go ahead and love what you do and put in your best to ensure that you do it right. That's our show for today. Thank you for watching. My name is Otobasi Tom.
And I am Francis Edit.
Have a nice day.
Hello, Nigeria. Welcome to Rise and Shine Show. My name